So it's a fireside chat, and most of the people are gone anyway. But I'm the CEO of LOCI. We've been through an ICO. We had, I don't know, 6,000 token purchasers. I'm also the co-founder of DATA, which is the Digital Asset Trade Association. We do all the state-by-state lobbying, legislation, and regulation reform. Also the founder of Top Tier Affiliate Group, and a lot of technical stuff as well. So
one question I have, right? The blockchain has a lot of promise and everything. The one question I have is I'm trying to find a concrete use case where blockchain clearly can do something the traditional method cannot.
Sure.
Or has a significant advantage, right? Everybody talk about identity, put it on, right? Besides that one.
That's crazy.
Right? Then, secure property digitization is another one, which
property digitization.
Yeah, the securitization, right? Like oil, gas, you put into token.
Of commodities, okay.
Yeah, commodity. So, what do you think is a good case besides this tool, right? You have to use blockchain. Use others, it's not as good.
Sure. Well, first and foremost, right? Blockchain as a concept is not actually a new thing, right? Computationally, it is using a computer for these digital ledgers, or for a ledger in general is. But blockchain is not really new. If you actually look back at the title and deed registration, right? That's been over thousands of years. It's a publicly available, auditable, immutable, consensus-driven ledger for trying to track exactly the ownership rights, who's had what, and so on and so forth, right? And it's consensus-driven because if you think about it, title and deed registration actually confirms the ownership of the neighbors in order to confirm that your property and the stakes of it exist. So,
I'm quite familiar with title deed. Is that from which
title
country?
and deed? It's the ownership of land.
Right. From which country?
Every country.
Deeds. Oh, title deeds, right?
Every country.
But don't that through a trusted central government recognize that?
Well, no, actually. So title and land registration or deeds registration is only held by the centralized government, right? To be able to maintain conformity. It's actually the consensus of the neighbors of the neighborhood that confirms it, right? So it's not the centralized government that creates the title and deed registration, okay? It's the neighbors and the agreement itself of who owns what property, and everybody then confirms, right? So in order to say, okay, I'd like to buy that chair, I need to confirm that chair, that chair, that chair, that chair, that chair, in order to confirm exactly how much land that chair has, right? We do a similar thing with consensus mechanisms in blockchain and digital ledgers. So in order to talk about the best use case possible for blockchain, I would say anything that is a registration of an asset in any case, right? It's had thousands of years to evolve to do exactly that. We don't do it with physical land property, we do it with intellectual property. Now, why this didn't really exist before and why it's the perfect use case now is that intellectual property, one, needs to be subjectively determined. Now we could do it objectively, right? Two, it needs to be immutable. You need to be able to have citations, you need to have consensus, you need to have recognition of novelty, and it's fundamentally digital now, okay? It was written before, but it's digital in essence now, in nature. So to be able to do this through a blockchain, you can post any invention, any stake, or any recognition of novelty directly to a blockchain and have the exact same immutability, auditability, transparency, anonymity, and recognition of value. Except what a blockchain does, aside from a centralized government, which is what the Patent Office does now, is that a blockchain allows us to do that globally and have the same recognition of value, the same uniform consistency and ledger entry everywhere, anywhere in the world, right? And you can also track transference without needing to go through and pay the fees for anything else. So, sure.
I enjoyed your presentation earlier. With the current 301 tariffs, IP is a big one that the U.S. will be heavily regulating for China.
Yeah.
You guys, how are you guys dealing with that, especially given your company and, you know, given data as well, which is more of like the state level, you know, SEC, USTR, all these agencies don't talk on these tariff negotiations. So
yeah, that's exactly
IP, like, it's crazy.
Yeah, so how are we dealing with the international
ramifications,
IP and trade tariffs?
Yes.
The reality is that everybody wants to coordinate because that's the best way that we can have compounding iterative development, right? All of these state level or nation state level agencies would love to be able to share information and not have to go through so much effort to be able to actually discover and disclose what is and isn't there. This hasn't been possible before because, again, all of the patents are examined subjectively. They have very specific writing, they have very specific text, right? They're intentionally written to confuse.
There's no international standard either.
Huh?
There's no international standard in IP law.
Well, now there is.
Contracts maybe, but, yeah. I mean,
no, us, right?
Oh, you guys, yeah,
so
sorry.
Our
yes.
system, what we actually created and invented is something called contextual derivation, okay? And what that basically is that we figured out a way to computationally understand and derive what something fundamentally does based on the way that it's searched. Not what it's called, not its use case, not its market, not its, you know, what it does. Then we can really dive down into computationally examining and understanding the minutia between two different variants, right? How many variables there are, variations, permutations, so on and so forth, right? We don't need to focus on what an examiner says is or isn't novel based on their own perspective. The other nice advantage of that is that we also now can do it internationally, right? We can do it in any language because it's context. It's a completely different data set, so. If you're basically asking how could we impact trade tariffs, we could completely flatten it all. We could get rid of any of the issues between trade, between any country, and we could get rid of the extreme amount of duplicative effort, right? It's something like $6 trillion a year spent on duplicative efforts through businesses that are actually working on the same things, inventors that are trying to file the same things in multiple countries, you know, and research institutions that are trying to find technology or offer technology out that already existed, but people end up trying to build the same thing. So we could fix a lot of that.
I guess to expand on that a little bit, and specifically about the LOCI and the company you're with, the blockchain can be global, but that would require LOCI to be global, to have representation in all the countries that you enforce, because the only thing, you would rely on the establishment to enforce the patent, but you would have to have somebody on the ground to understand the patent, to understand prior art. Do you have to do prior art in every country in the world?
No. So what we've essentially done, and actually Mark's walking away, but he's one of our data providers here. He's the largest data provider of patent data in the world, by the way. That guy creates the patent data for 93% of the world's market, right? Yeah, literally the largest database in the world. That's why he's got the crazy hair. But yeah, so we don't have to necessarily have boots on the ground, right? We are relying on the establishment for civil litigation, things like that, or lawsuits, right? And we're working within those existing constructs for court admissibility. That's not up to us to decide, right? What we'd like to decide, though, is we'd like to replace litigation with volume, right? If you can have a lot of inventions that are coming out every day, there's no sense in holding on to something and suing to try to get the best yield out of it, right? The best yield would just be coming up with another thing or buying the next thing at pennies on the dollar. So volume overcomes the value add from litigation, lawsuits, and fighting for these things. Now, as far as understanding patents and technologies in other countries, users do that for us. Okay? The way that we derive and understand this context is because inventors are the ones that are looking and using our prior art searching tool to recognize what inventions came before in order for something to exist today, their invention to exist today. So they go through and they reference prior art from all sorts of different walks, right? And what we get is essentially an equidistant point between all of their relevant prior art and a title that they add. We get a filing from there, and then they can stake that on the blockchain if they'd like.
Okay, so that is the requirement you would have, as you talked about your exchange. You would need to get essentially this verification of uniqueness or verification of no prior
we
before
don't need
you
to
put it on the
determine,
exchange.
yeah, so we don't subjectively analyze to understand if it is novel. It's computationally analyzed. Right? It's done through heuristics, right? And it's done through understanding and mapping out the white space by understanding everything else. And there's an 897-page patent that you're welcome to read about it. Like,
Yeah,
I'll talk about it all day.
I'm in the GRC space, so compliance and risk, liability are huge for me, and that has a liability with a capital L.
Yeah, no. So compliance is still a big one, right? The risk is mitigated through volume and velocity, right? How many technologies can come to market, how quickly we can get to liquidity, right? What the ROI is. Think focusing on ROI as opposed to yield. So it's let's get to market and make money back, right? Even if it's a small amount. If I don't need to invest the $130,000 to a patent and wait the 6 to 8 years, if I can get $10,000 and move on to the next one in the same day, I'm going to do that every single time.
John, so do you not see your company as a target for litigation directly, again and again, by everybody?
Sure. So I don't, and for a couple of reasons. So the first thing is that all the inventors that do searches actually sign up through law firms, okay? So what we actually do is we wholesale the product, the patent searching tool. It's a do-it-yourself patent searching tool to law firms, intellectual property attorneys, and patent agents, and then they retail it to their clients, okay? The only people that know who the clients actually are, the names, are the law firms themselves, and the API actually generates and creates a unique user ID that gets sent to us. So we have no way of knowing who the people are, what they're trying to work in, right? It's actually all covered under attorney-client privilege. And we set it up specifically that way to make sure that that wasn't an issue. On the other side, the buy side, right? Any enterprise, bank, anybody else there, those guys are also anonymized through the bid process, and that's covered under UN trade secret law. So we're extremely compliant. We've gone through all of those checks and balances.
Interesting. My second question is for pricing. Someone says my idea is worth $1 million, and they set the price because they're the contributor.
Sure.
But the price is, whatever the transaction price is actually the price, the value of that, right?
Yeah, so
how does that work?
You're referring to a market value, and this is exactly what we get rid of. The reality is that when you're trying to understand $1 million or 1 million won or yen or ruble, right, whatever, you're looking at that market. You have something like 3,500 variables here to understand, right? You have the conversion rates between currencies, you have supply chain, you have market share, you have market competition, you have all of these other things that go in. It's completely unrealistic to value something based on the market. Leave it to the enterprise to do that. That's all they need to do now, right? What we do is we offer and by these inventions, it's actually the right to file a patent, not a patent itself. Think of it more as like an option to a patent, okay? It's a public disclosure event. We're literally selling the rights to the prior art and buying the rights to the prior art, right? Not patents. Nobody's filed anything. What we are doing, though, is we can determine, because of this contextual derivation, we can determine how many permutations there will be, how many variants of an invention, without necessarily needing to know what those inventions are. By understanding and determining every variation, or at least how many there will be, if there's going to be 1,000 inventions or 1,000 variations, the first one is worth 1,000 coin. The last one is worth 1 coin. Okay? If there were 10,000, the first one's worth 10,000 coin. The last one's worth 1. the foundation buys these inventions for coin, package them together into investment pools, okay? And then we offer those investment pools, like all the technologies that go into an iPhone, up to the highest bidder, which is typically enterprises, okay? The enterprises then determine how much they'd like to buy these investment pools for.
And these pools are pools of derivatives. They're derivatives, right? They're option rights.
Yeah.
They're option rights.
Yes, yes. So what they actually are, they're pools of prior art, right? So within patents, if you wanted to file an invention, right, or you wanted to file a patent, and he's got the prior art on exactly what you've done, right? He's the only one that's allowed to file it within that first year. After the first year, it becomes public domain, and then nobody's allowed to file a patent. So normally, you would have to wait for him to go through the patent process and wait for the thing to be granted in order for him to be able to sell it outright, or you could license any time during that process. Instead, he can actually sell the rights to the prior art. Because everybody's anonymized, no government agency knows who that person is. But we do know that it exists, and thus is transparent.
What's like the cost effectiveness for an inventor, like a small inventor who now has to kind of go through, have a retainer with another attorney firm to be able to utilize you guys? Like,
so they don't have to have a retainer with the firm.
Okay.
Many customers are able to sign up directly through that law firm's website.
Okay.
The reason is that it has to go through them for bond and litigation insurance, right? They have to cover if they went through to file a patent. What we didn't want to do is completely stop the patent process. You certainly could go right around it, but if somebody wanted to use our system and then said, I really want to file a patent, we didn't want to get in the way of that.
I guess it's just, I mean, you would have to have like a cutoff point, right, for your target market, because it wouldn't, in terms of how much the invention is worth or what you value the invention to be?
One coin.
Okay. So that's for everything.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let the market determine the value of the coin. The coin may be $1, maybe $1 billion. But essentially it comes down to one iteration. What is the last iteration of any technology worth? It's worth one coin. The product's only $250 or 100 coin. Actually, right now we have a promotion for one coin. Or $250, but yeah. So basically comes down to $250 is the minimum viable value. It's cheaper than it is to file a patent, that's for sure.
No, it's definitely, I mean.
When you say coin, you mean the LOCI coin.
LOCI coin, yeah.
7 cents today.
Huh?
7 cents today?
Well, right now it is, yeah.
Yeah.
The whole market's pretty down.
Yeah. I just lost my train of thought. How many assets, how many inventions, how many bundles, how many customers do you have today?
We can't disclose the number of customers. Again, there's attorney-client privilege in a lot of this, right? And the exchange aspect is not live. We need a certain number of critical mass of users in order to actually get the valuation metric, because we have to have an understanding of the permutations of the prior art, right? So that figures right around 60,000 users is what we need to be able to get in order to have, I think it was, 72 quadrillion combinations. So
you have a roadmap for when you expect that?
This year.
This year?
Yeah.
Okay.
We've got several research institutions that are ready to come on board. They're just waiting for the valuation metrics, right? And the valuation metrics are, in this case, decentralized, right? The very nature of coming up with a new idea and contributing to society actually contributes to the valuation, right? The more inventions, the more dilutive the rest of the market is. That's beautiful.
But within the model, is there like a good invention versus a bad invention?
No.
Or just all invention?
No, because the reality is that that's a matter of perspective.
Or
Right.
is money?
No, it's a matter of perspective.
You're not going to make money.
Say what?
If your invention is bad and go through the process of getting a patent.
But who determines bad?
If I can't sell the product.
Okay, so that's
Financial
one.
returns, I guess.
That's one market. in one space and time,
Right.
right? You have no idea of future applications or uses, right? Nor do you have any idea what other markets could use it for. Nor do you understand what other enterprises are looking for that's completely under the radar and quiet, right? So a matter of understanding what something's worth or having a bad invention is just a matter of perspective. It's relativity, right? That's what we're trying to create here is a completely closed loop for everything, right? We want to make economic perpetual motion.
Do you have exclusive rights on the options?
Well, anybody that's in the system, yeah. And what we do with those rights is we give them out to everybody on a public blockchain. It's public disclosure, right? There is no rights to them. The only rights that we have is the link between the attorneys, the attorney-client privilege, and the blockchain, right? We're the only ones that are able to recognize that, and we keep it strictly attorney-client privilege. Anybody else?
How much information could I get from evaluating something on the exchange?
What do you mean?
How much information would I be able to see before I could personally value and assess someone's offer?
Sure. So you're saying from the buy side, you're interested, like if you wanted to buy a technology?
I don't know who did it. I don't know who's representing them probably.
Yep.
I need to know a lot about it.
So there are a couple of things, right? And it depends on if the customer has filled out a provisional patent web form or not. Some people want to do that, right? If they wanted the option of actually filing a patent, usually they'd fill that stuff out as well, and they're welcome to disclose that behind a paywall or firewall or something like that. But what you would see hashed out on the blockchain is a specific location, like a GPS location. And that location is the equidistant point of the CPC classifications, keywords, and everything else that they've used as references, as well as the context and functions of all the other references in prior art, right? So what you'd see is the title of the thing and a keyword tag cloud. Yep, with a location ID.
And
right?
from that, I would be expected to bid.
Yeah, you're bidding in a relative coin. So.
What do you bid, or the market price is set?
No. LOCI has already bought it at this stage, right? If it's getting staked to the blockchain, LOCI would have already bought it if it's up for sale, right? Or the transaction would occur through LOCI. It's most advantageous for him to say that he's interested and then looking for things in this space to group along with it, right? He'd say, hey, give me 1,000 variations or 1,000, comparative products to this or complementary technologies to this, and we can go and hunt all those things down. This all happens extremely quickly. Yeah, this happens in a matter of seconds or minutes, right? It's scouring the earth.
Then what you're bidding on potentially is that bundle.
That investment pool, yes.
And then that is the fiat that goes back into the LOCI coin.
Exactly. So it goes into the
raising
market.
The overall value of the coin itself.
Yeah.
Which then the inventor gets a benefit of that because they got one coin for their invention.
Well, actually, the inventors, because they got, say, 1,000 coin for their invention, right?
Right.
Let's say that the price was $1 when they got that 1,000 coin for selling their invention, okay?
Right.
And then we packaged their invention together with a whole bunch of other ones that we bought collectively for 1 million coin.
Right.
And then we sell that investment pool for 10 million coin.
Right.
Okay. The person or the enterprise that's buying with that 10 million coin needs to go down to the market and buy 10 million coin, 20% of the market, which means they're buying it from you being the inventor that got it in the first place. This gives you an opportunity to go from $1 to say $100.
Right.
It's up to whatever you're willing to sell, right? Just about everybody at that stage is an inventor that has already sold their technology, right, and received coin in compensation for it, right? This closes that loop. Now, any of the proceeds, that delta between the million coin that we bought the assets for and the 10 million that we sold the assets for, right? That profit, because it's a non-profit foundation, actually rains back down and acquires all the runts of the litter, things that were there, right, that nobody thought of, all the bad ideas. Right? Collectively, this is hundreds of trillions of dollars in value, which means the overall currency now has no opportunity to fall in value. It has an intrinsic value that is the sum of intellectual property in the world, right? Creating an asset-backed currency that can never be defeated.
Do inventors have any say in the bundle they are being put into?
Well, they've already sold the rights to it at that stage.
So no.
Yeah, it's again, it's objective. It's sometimes going to be based on what the enterprise is asking for. Sometimes it's going to be based on what the computer says makes the most sense. But ultimately, what we're all trying to strive for here is as much volume and velocity as possible, right? We want to see throughput, as many assets going through this thing as possible. The more assets that convey and transact, the more the value of the currency, the underlying thing, and ultimately the more the markets are reflected. Ultimately, what we'll end up getting to is that all GDP will be transacting through this sort of thing, because every product that's sold and almost every service that's offered uses ideas and inventions to get there, and almost everything has intellectual property. The sum of intellectual property right now in value is about $780 trillion.
You're just assuming a lot of R&D is available to take an idea and actually try to implement something that then can be sold.
No, what I'm suggesting is crowdsourcing the R&D, the execution, the product development. Crowdsourcing the R, right, and allowing enterprises to do the D, right, to do the development, which they're extremely good at executing on, but individuals to do the R, which they're extremely good at doing, right. Individuals are much more nimble, much more innovative. Enterprises are terrible at being innovative, but we're bifurcating that process.
It's just I still can't wrap my head around the bundle. So I get a bundle of ideas, a right to a bundle of ideas, and I will most likely try to make more out of the bundle than out of any one. So I do have a research, science, design.
Yes and no, not necessarily, right? So what you could be doing is looking for one technology, and you want to build a moat for yourself, right? So you could only be looking for one specific thing, but you wanted to have all of the potential competitors or infringers around it, right? And that essentially elevates the value of that one patent to the value of the whole portfolio, or that one invention to the value of the whole asset class, right? That's kind of the point.
Would you compare it to just an index fund or an index fund?
No, because it's so in order to really be an index fund, right? Like you're referring to an asset-backed security as opposed to an asset-backed currency. An index fund doesn't have aligned incentives in that respect, right? Their sole job is to make more profit off of the value of that fund or the value of the assets being transacted, right? That is not the case in this sort of thing. Our main incentive is to see as many transactions occur as possible, and we're actually not taking any profits or proceeds from it. We just want to see as much developments as possible. Right.
So I had kind of one. What's drawn me to cryptocurrency in particular is this idea of decentralization and incentives for an immutable, open network that's very transparent and whatnot. One thing that kind of caught my ear with that conversation about buying these bundles of intellectual property, is there any concern for a centralization of ideas? Whereas people are clearly incentivized to generate these ideas and earn LOCI coin and kind of speed up the pace of innovation and stuff, is there any concern that could lead to large corporations or IP firms, going out and trying to just collect all of this IP and then, like you said, building moats and centralizing?
So on the surface level, you would think yes, but the reality is they'd be competing against themselves and would actually literally be putting themselves out of business, right? Because every time they're doing this, they're buying these assets, they're increasing the price of the coins. And it's the markets that are actually the ones saying it, right? So as soon as the market sees that the same people are buying up all of the coin all the time, the speculative valuations skyrocket, right? And there's a higher and higher multiplier every time. It ends up being absolutely disadvantageous, right? One entity holding it, just the same concept goes there. if you hold all the money in the world, how much is it worth? Nothing.
Yeah.
Right? If you hold 99.99% of it, it's worth substantially less than 99.98. Right? There is no advantage. There's no advantage to holding all the IP. And the other side of it is enterprises basically don't really want to sue the little guy for protection on patent infringements. They don't have any problem suing each other. Right? Let the titans fight the titans. Right? And you let the demigods and the people fight the people and whoever else. There's really no sense in doing that. Right now, by the way, with the existing patent system, there's a huge incentive to doing that. That's how patent control is.
Yeah.
Eastern District of Texas.
But with Velocity, it would, somebody trying to be a centralized repository for all these ideas, with Velocity, they would be out of business on that. That just, it's a vicious cycle.
Doesn't it kind of numb the desire to get a patent? I mean, as an inventor, yeah, I want to get as many patents out there as I can, sell them, make money, but like, doesn't that just numb the idea of a patent? Like the scarcity principle, no, I have not. I do have a lot of great ideas. Right.
There's not a single inventor that enjoys filing patents, I assure you. I have 27 of them. They're terrible. What I do get a real kick out of, and I've had over 5,000 inventions or something, and I've been a part of 20,000 plus innovations and inventions. What I do get a kick out of is seeing people use it, right? Seeing the difference that it makes. That's an intrinsic pride. That's an intrinsic value for me. That's what makes a huge difference. And that's absolutely what I want, right? I want to see that I've gotten some value, right? I've been recognized for something, but at the same time that it's made an impact, it's made a difference, it's made somebody's life better, it's made something faster or easier, right? I want to see, oh, there's, I'm an inventor of a skateboard. Look at that, somebody's riding my skateboard down the street. That's really cool, right? I don't need to be the one selling it. In fact, I'd rather not be the one selling it, manufacturing it, right? I'd rather move on to the hoverboard or whatever else. Like that's kind of the point is.
But you sell your right to that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I got enough money to go and move on to something else that I also had another idea in, right? The other big side of this, though, is that, we've got this general concept that I would love to change. We've got a paradigm understanding that inventions or inventors are only those that have filed patents and made money on it. We are all inventors. We all have ideas. Every time we, somebody accidentally drops something on their foot, they're like, oh, I wish I had a steel, toe. Or you drop your cell phone in the toilet and you say, oh man, I wish it was waterproof. These are all ideas, right? Exactly. So now everybody can do something with these ideas, right? And can make some incremental, it doesn't matter if it's $10 or $1,000 or $1 billion, right? Gone are the days of the monopolies where people can go and buy all the competitors and just shut things down. There's no sense in doing that, right? It's cheap enough to just go right around it.
So with the law firm player in the mix, do you have an idea of the minimum cost to an inventor to enter your system?
$250.
$250.
Or during the One Loki promotion, you could buy one coin
right
for
now.
7 cents.
Yeah, I'm like, if I have a coin, that's all I need, right? So
Right now.
if I drop something on my toe and I think steel-toed sandals,
You can get 1 month of subscription right now for 7 or 8 cents.
$250.
I staked my idea.
Yep. Yeah, I think, Brendan, you've actually filed stakes a
two
claim
of them,
through your
yeah.
system, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. So there.
Not long at all. I mean, you get on the system and do your prior art search, and if you don't find anything in the intersection of your functional search, essentially, you can stake your idea right then and there. They're obviously still building, functionality of the system and allowing for uploads of like patent drawings and things like that. But it's I would say, I don't want to say it's in beta testing right now, but clearly in the community, they're definitely taking input from the community about what could be improved in the system and implementing those improvements on a daily,
it's a consumer
weekly
product,
basis.
right? It's not easy to build a consumer business. It really isn't. That aspect of it is. By the way, we've also got reverse searching that looks like is coming down the pipeline. My dev team just broke that one on me yesterday or the day before. They're like, hey, we're building reverse searching. I was like, cool, when are you guys going to get started on that? They're like, yeah, we're 60% done. Okay, great. So anyway, all right, well, if you guys don't have any other questions, we got to run, but thank you very much. I hope answered all your questions. Great questions.